The Galactic Refuge Center on Sarlath V was a sprawling network of metallic corridors, domed habitats, and reinforced containment fields. The entire complex sat on a barren, windswept plateau, surrounded by sulphurous mountains that seemed to stretch endlessly beneath a sky tinged orange and purple. To Lila Thatcher, the landscape was simultaneously desolate and fascinating. At 14 years old, she had already grown accustomed to moving from one strange place to another as her parents sought work wherever they could find it. Earth's status in the galactic community was still tenuous, and for many human families, this meant taking whatever jobs they could get in distant outposts and fringe planets. Lila's parents had found work in maintenance at the Refuge Center, a facility meant to shelter alien refugees who had lost their homes to wars, natural disasters, or political strife. For Lila, it was a lonely existence. She was one of the few human children in a place dominated by adults and aliens, each with their own customs, languages, and ways of life. The center's inhabitants, like the landscape around them, were diverse and often intimidating. They came from every corner of the galaxy, each species bearing its own unique features and histories, and most of them seemed confused or even a bit wary of her presence. Every day after her parents left for work, Lila would wander the center's twisting corridors, her steps echoing off the metallic walls as she explored new corners and discovered strange sights. She was fascinated by the alien inhabitants, though she kept her distance, watching from afar as they went about their lives in this strange sanctuary. The aliens came in all shapes and sizes, tall, willowy beings with translucent skin that shimmered in the light, small, insectoid creatures that scuttled along the walls, and hulking figures with scales or armor like exoskeletons that made them look more like machines than living beings. One day, as she ventured deeper into the complex than she ever had before, Lila came across a sector marked with flashing red lights and heavy security doors. Signs warned of the danger beyond, and a faint hum of energy pulsed through the air. She knew instinctively that this was a place she wasn't supposed to go, a restricted sector housing the more dangerous residents of the Refuge Center. But curiosity got the better of her, and she slipped through the half-open doors, her footsteps careful and quiet. The corridor was lined with containment fields, each one holding an alien being, most of whom were considered volatile or unpredictable. As she passed each cell, she caught glimpses of creatures that made her breath catch. Some were monstrous, with scales, fangs, or eyes that glowed in the dark. Others had features that shifted and shimmered, making it impossible to determine where their bodies began or ended. Yet, amidst these terrifying beings, there was one containment field that held her gaze like no other. At the end of the hall, in a cell set slightly apart from the others, sat a creature unlike any she had ever seen. He was massive, his coiled body stretching across the entire length of his containment cell. His scales shimmered in hues of deep green and black, catching the light with an eerie, almost hypnotic beauty. Sharp claws extended from his powerful limbs, and a tail tipped with long, jagged spines curled around him protectively. But it was his eyes that truly captivated her, a pair of fierce, glowing orange eyes that seemed to burn with a life of their own. Lila knew she should feel afraid. Everything about the creature screamed danger. She could see the raw power in his muscular form, the lethal sharpness of his claws, and the cold intelligence in his gaze. Yet, as she stood there, she felt an inexplicable pull, a sense of connection that defied reason. She placed her hand against the transparent field, her gaze locked on the creature's orange eyes. "Hey there," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the containment field. "I bet you're lonely in there." To her surprise, the creature's eyes softened, his massive head tilting slightly as though he were studying her. He let out a low, rumbling sound, a noise that sent a strange warmth through her chest. It sounded almost like a purr, a gentle vibration that resonated within her. She could hardly believe it. This terrifying predator was responding to her, not with aggression, but with a calm curiosity that mirrored her own. She returned the next day, and the day after that, each time spending a little longer beside the containment field. The creature seemed to recognize her, his orange eyes lighting up whenever she approached. She began to think of him as Kiro, a name that came to her one day as she sat beside his cell, telling him stories about Earth's forests, rivers, and animals. She spoke to him about the places she'd lived, the friends she'd left behind, and her family's struggles to make a life for themselves among the stars. Kiro listened, his gaze never wavering, his massive form relaxed and still as though he were absorbing every word. News of Lila's friendship with Kiro spread quickly through the refuge center. Guards and residents alike watched her with a mixture of astonishment and disbelief, unable to comprehend why a young, fragile human girl would willingly spend time with one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Kiro's species was classified as predator class, known throughout the galaxy as relentless hunters with a natural instinct for tracking and capturing prey. The guards warned her repeatedly, insisting that her visits were reckless, that Kiro could turn on her at any moment. But Lila was undeterred. She knew Kiro wouldn't hurt her. She had seen the kindness in his eyes, felt the gentle warmth in his presence, and she trusted him completely. One afternoon, as she sat beside Kiro's containment field, a group of alien teenagers approached, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disdain. They were trainees at the center, dressed in sleek uniforms that marked them as future diplomats and ambassadors. They regarded her with an air of superiority, their gazes flicking between her and Kiro with barely concealed scorn. "You talk to it like it's a pet," one of them sneered, a tall alien with dark, scaled skin and a narrow, elongated face. "Do you even know what that thing is, human?" Lila looked up, meeting the alien's gaze with calm defiance. "I know exactly what he is," she replied, her voice steady. "And he's not awing. His name is Kiro." The teenagers exchanged glances, some of them laughing openly. "Kiro?" Another alien scoffed, shaking his head. "You think you can tame a predator-class creature? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." But Lila refused to back down. She had seen something in Kiro that went beyond his sharp claws and fierce appearance. She saw a loneliness in his eyes, a longing for connection that mirrored her own. She didn't care what they thought Kiro was her friend, and she wasn't about to abandon him just because others couldn't understand. Her friendship with Kiro deepened, each visit strengthening the bond between them. She brought him small gifts she thought he might appreciate, smooth stones she'd collected from the edge of the refuge, bits of metal she'd found, and even flowers she'd picked from the center's tiny garden. Kiro seemed to appreciate the gestures, his orange eyes brightening each time she held out her offerings. In return, he would lower his massive head, pressing his muzzle against the containment field as though trying to bridge the gap between them. Eventually, the guards relented, allowing her to enter Kiro's containment field under close supervision. Lila's heart pounded as she stepped inside, her gaze locked on Kiro as he watched her approach. She extended a hand, her fingers trembling slightly, and Kiro lowered his head, his eyes softening as she reached out to touch him. Her fingers brushed against the rough, cool surface of his scales, and she felt a warmth flood her chest, a sense of connection that went beyond words. Their bond became a legend at the refuge center, a symbol of hope and understanding that inspired others to reach out to those they had once feared. Other refugees, inspired by her courage and compassion, began to form unlikely friendships, bridging the gaps between species and cultures. Lila's simple act of kindness sparked a wave of change, a reminder that even the most dangerous beings held the capacity for connection and understanding. As the years passed, Lila's friendship with Kiro grew, their bond becoming a source of inspiration for all who encountered them. She became known as the human who befriended the predator, a symbol of unity and compassion, her story spreading far beyond Sarlath V to distant worlds. She inspired countless others to see beyond the surface, to look for the goodness hidden within even the fiercest of hearts. Though she had come to Sarlath V as a poor, lonely human girl, she left as a legend, a symbol of hope and unity, and a reminder that friendship could be found in the most unlikely of places.